In this video, I'm going to look at quadratic inequalities. I'm going to be going over 4 examples right here. They can come in a lot of different forms, but the idea is the same for each one. You're going to find where your quadratic inequality equals 0. You're going to place those points on the number line. You're going to test points in each range, and then you're going to test your endpoints. And after that, you'll have your answer. So I'm going to start off with this equation here, x squared plus x is greater than or equal to 12. So to find our zeros, we're just going to move everything to one side. And then we're going to factor x squared plus x minus 12. And so this factors pretty nicely. It'll just turn into x minus 3 and x plus 4. And that's greater than or equal to 0. So now we need to find where this equation here equals 0. And that's pretty easy. For this first number, it's just going to be 3, because there'll be 3 minus 3, and that's 0. And this whole thing will be 0, and then it's going to be negative 4. So these are our two zeros. So next we're going to want to place these points on a number line. So let's do that here. So our points are going to be negative 4 and 3, and you just go off to infinity. And next we're going to want to test points in each range. So how this works, you'll notice we have 3 different parts on this number line right here. So each point here breaks it up into the different parts. And so we're going to want to test a point in each one of these ranges to see if this inequality is true. So for example, let's say we can just choose a point between negative 4 and 3. Let's just go with 1. So if 1 satisfies this inequality, then every single other point in this range will also satisfy the inequality. And if 1 doesn't satisfy the inequality, then none of the other points in here will. And so you're going to want to test points in each one of these ranges, and it doesn't matter what number you choose. Usually just whatever number is easiest to work with. So I'm going to choose negative 5 here and 4 here. And so here's how you test a point. So we have negative 5. So negative 5, we're going to plug into this equality. So it's going to be negative 5, negative 5 minus 3, negative 5 plus 4 is greater than or equal to 0. So if this is true, then every single point in this range is going to be in our solution. So let's test this. So here we have negative 8 and negative 1. It's greater than or equal to 0, and that's just going to be 8. It's greater than or equal to 0. And so you'll notice that is true. So every single point in this range right here is going to be in our solution. Now, a quicker way to do this part right here when we're testing our point, instead of finding the exact value, we can just find if it's positive or negative, right? Because if it's positive, it's going to be greater than 0, and if it's negative, it's going to be less than 0. So it doesn't matter. We don't need to find this exact value. We just need to know whether it's positive or negative. And it's just a quicker way of doing it. So if we were to do this over again, what I mean by this is negative 5 minus 3, well, that's going to be a negative, and negative 5 plus 4, that's also a negative. That's greater than or equal to 0, and a negative times a negative is a positive, and any positive number is going to be greater than or equal to 0. So that will work. So you'll notice it's the same answer we get here. It's just a quicker way of doing it. So now we've tested a point in this first range here, and so we are going to want to move on to the next range. So that works there. So let's test out 1. So 1, when we plug it in to this right here, we're going to get -1 minus 3 times -1 plus 4 is greater than or equal to 0. So -1 minus -3, that's going to be a negative number, and -1 plus 4, that's going to be a positive number, and any positive times a negative is going to be a negative, and a negative number is not going to be greater than or equal to 0, so this so that point does not work. So that means that all the numbers between -4 and 3 won't be in our solution. So we've tested so -infinity to -4, -4 to 3, and so our last one is just going to be this range right here, and so our point we chose was 4. So let's plug that in. So -4 minus 3, -4, oh, I'm sorry, not -4, just, sorry, this is going to be 4 minus 3, and 4 plus 4, greater than or equal to 0, and this first number is going to be positive. This next number is also going to be positive, and a positive times a positive is always going to be a positive number, and any positive number is greater than or equal to 0, so that will work. And so if we go back to our number line here, so this first range worked, this second one didn't, and we just tested this last range right here, and we know that all the points in there are going to work. So here, I'll just redraw our number line. So we have -4, and then we had all this, and then had 3 right here, and all of these were part of our solution. And so now the last thing we need to do before, well, hold on, before we write our inequality is we need to test each of the endpoints, right, or, well, our zeros, which are going to be -4 and 3. And so it's going to be the same thing as last time. We're going to plug in the number and see if it satisfies the inequality. So if we plug in -4 to our equation, well, that's pretty easy. We just know that if we plug -4 in here, we're going to get -4 plus 4, and that's going to equal 0. So this thing is just going to equal, it's going to be 0 equals 0, which is true. So 4 we can include in our range. And so for 3, it's going to be the same thing. If we plug in 3 right here, it's going to be 3 minus 3, that's going to be 0. 0 equals 0, that's true. So this point is also going to be in our range. And so now we just need to write out our range. So for this first one right here, it's going to go all the way back to -infinity. So it's going to be -infinity to 4 inclusive, so we want a square bracket, because remember this point worked. And then this range was not part of it, so we're going to have a union, and then it's going to go all the way to 3, which is also part of our solution, and that goes all the way to infinity. And so this is going to be, I'm sorry, there's a negative 4. Should be a negative 4. And so this is going to be our solution.